Discover this grandma's incredible 30-year journey of hidden strength and life-changing triumph. Eleanor Smith was a silent warrior, a grandmother with an unyielding spirit etched into the very fabric of Maplewood. Widowed for 30 years, she wore her resilience like a badge of honor, raising her 2 children in a world that had crumbled around her since losing her soldier husband. The small-town diner and the corner grocery store bore witness to her days. The clatter of plates and the hum of conversation blended with her laughter, an ever-present force guiding her family through the storm of life. But whispers of uncertainty shook the town when the news broke. The factory, Maplewood's lifeblood, was on the brink of closure due to mismanagement. The fear was palpable. Families that had thrived for generations stood on the edge of despair, their livelihoods in jeopardy. For Eleanor, this was more than just another challenge. It was a reckoning. She gathered her strength, rallying her neighbors in the town hall. The air was thick with anxiety. Old names surfaced. "The women don't know how to lead," they said, eyes narrowing at Eleanor, who had toiled long enough to be heard. Yet, in irony, it was her quiet strength that had long held this community together. Each meeting was a battle. Betrayal struck when someone she trusted revealed a secret, magnifying the cracks that threatened the unity they desperately needed. "I've worked my whole life for this town," she said, her voice trembling, "and I won't let it slip away. Not when my children's futures are at stake." The air buzzed with tension, her emotions flaring like wildfire. She felt the weight of their doubt but also their fear. And in the heart of that storm, Eleanor stood steady. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As Eleanor navigated these trials, her own home felt the strain. Her children questioned everything: the missed soccer games, the late-night meetings. "Mom, is this worth it?" they asked, voices heavy with confusion. The emotional toll echoed through the walls. But just when hope seemed dim, a spark ignited. The kids from the local school, their voices ringing with inspiration, stepped forward. They stood at the front of town hall, eager to support their parents in fighting for jobs, united in the belief that they deserved a future. That pivotal moment displayed a beautiful irony. The children, inspired by Eleanor's courage, became the heart of the community she was trying to save. In front of the town council, Eleanor faced them, her voice trembling but her heart bold. This wasn't about her. It was about everyone fighting for their place. As Eleanor recalled the faces of hardship staring back at her, eyes brimming with emotion and expectation, a crucial question loomed. Would they finally recognize the incredible strength of this unassuming grandmother? Would they lay aside their prejudices and embrace the heroic role she had played in their collective struggle? Would she become the symbol of unbreakable hope they needed? Eleanor's heart raced as she looked out at the crowd gathered in the town hall. There were familiar faces, neighbors who had grown alongside her, children with bright eyes, and youth who were counting on her courage. Each one carried a piece of the town's story, a weight of expectation blended with their growing fears. "Together we can do this," she declared, fighting back tears that threatened to spill over. "We need to show that Maplewood is worth saving." The room was charged with energy, voices rising above the tension. A few murmurs of doubt emerged, remnants of the days when Eleanor had been told she didn't belong in this fight. But as she glanced around, she saw allies forming. The kids had rallied their parents, their youthful idealism igniting a spark that had long flickered in her heart. "Mom!" her son Jake called out, stepping forward. His shadowy figure against the weight of the room reminded her of the boy. He used to be uncertain yet fiercely loyal. "We're with you. You've always taught us to fight for what's right." The words hung in the air, transforming the room's anxiety into something potent. Eleanor smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. That was it, the fire she needed. She was not alone in this battle. The town council, consisting of old faces who rarely varied in their approach, watched as the atmosphere shifted. The realization that a community was rising up provoked whispers of discontent among them. "This isn't how it's done," one councilman muttered, fear evident in his voice. But Eleanor sensed a change. The people around her had chosen their path. "Let us show them our plan," Eleanor called out, as children began to share their ideas. One girl shouted, "We could create a community garden." It was unexpected, but hope bloomed all the same. Others joined in, tossing out ideas for a local farmers' market, increased support for local businesses, and more. Those simple words, raw and genuine, turned into a symphony of dreams. The crowd erupted with a roaring applause, their joy unconfined. Eleanor's heart swelled. Finally, they were expressing what Maplewood really meant to them. Their home, their lifeline, their heart. As the meeting continued, Eleanor felt her spirit lift. For every doubt that had been cast, something beautiful was budding: unity, hope, and the recognition of what their little town could accomplish together. She was reminded that their worth lay not in the factory alone, but in the very people who called Maplewood home. Suddenly, the door swung open, and in walked a newspaper reporter, her camera clicking as she recorded the buzz in the room. Eleanor felt a tight knot in her stomach. Public attention brought both scrutiny and opportunity. The fleeting moment of excitement faded into uncertainty. What if they only focus on the negatives? Her mind raced. But just as quickly, she quelled her fears. This was their moment. Their voices needed to be heard beyond the walls of the town hall. With resolve, Eleanor stepped forward, addressing the reporter directly. "We have a story to tell," she declared, urgency painting her words. "Maplewood is more than a factory. It's a community full of hope, strength, and determination." As she spoke, she felt tears of pride swell up, knowing this was just the beginning. As she concluded, the crowd erupted into cheers, reinforcing the doubt that was now fully behind them. But deep down, an inkling of worry nagged at her heart. What if this was just a fleeting moment of unity? The challenges ahead loomed larger as she confronted the looming realities of public reaction, but she knew one thing for certain: she had ignited a flame. Now was not the time to dim the light, but to keep it burning bright. Eleanor turned to her children, eyes brimming with courage. "Are you ready for the next step?" she asked, embracing her fears alongside them. But in the back of her mind, a new question stirred. Would they be able to rally Maplewood's strength before it slipped away? And if so, who would stand with her in the fight to come? Eleanor had hardly finished speaking when the cheers faded and a wave of uncertainty washed over her. The heat of the moment felt fleeting, and she could already sense the tide of reality crashing in. She understood the road ahead would not be easy. Her hands trembled slightly, not just from the adrenaline, but from the gravity of her new role. "Okay, we need to get organized," Eleanor continued, her voice now steadier. "Let us divide into groups and brainstorm how we can put these ideas into action." The crowd seemed to pulse with renewed energy as volunteers began to step forward. People naturally gravitated toward their passions. A group of young mothers clustering around the garden proposal, a couple of retired folks discussing the promise of a local market, and a few teenagers lighting up over social media outreach. Her heart lifted as she watched them coordinate, their enthusiasm revitalizing her own spirit. This was showing her the best of Maplewood, the way people could come together when the stakes were high. But as the excitement swelled, a creeping doubt whispered to her again. Would it truly last? Would the indignant voices of the council echo in their minds and dampen their resolve? Suddenly, Jake tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, can I help with the social media stuff?" His eyes gleamed with eagerness. "Absolutely. You're the pro," she replied, chuckling. "You and your friends can spread the word about us meeting to discuss these projects. I'll get everyone on board," he declared, already texting on his phone, determination written all over his young face. The meeting soon broke out into clusters of ideas and laughter. It felt electric. Eleanor moved from group to group, connecting faces and projects, fostering bonds that felt inexplicably magnetic, like pieces of a puzzle snapping into place. As she passed by a gathering of elders, she heard Mr. Thompson, the town's unofficial historian, recounting memories of Maplewood's golden days. His voice was gravelly but warm, sharing tales of barbecues and 4th of July parades. "We need to get back to that spirit," he exclaimed, invoking nostalgic cheers. Yet there was something in his eyes that made her pause, longing mixed with despair. Was there so much lost that she hadn't seen? Eleanor knelt beside him, squeezing his hand. "We can bring that back together," she promised, her heart aching with the weight of their shared history. It was true, the factory had overshadowed the heart of their town, But she sensed that heart could still beat with strength again. Hours passed, but no one seemed to notice the sun dipping low outside. Just as Eleanor began to think they might have a solid plan, the heavy wooden doors swung open once more. This time the air shifted. In walked Councilman Adams, flanked by a couple of stern faces from the council. Eleanor's smile flickered like a candle in the wind. "Eleanor," he said with a condescending smirk, "I was concerned when I heard about your little gathering. What exactly are you planning to do with all these ideas?" The murmur in the room stopped instantly, replaced by anxious whispers. Eyes darted to Eleanor, who felt all the blood rushing from her face. Was this the storm she had anticipated? She took a breath, locking eyes with Jake, who stood resolutely by her side. This was it, the moment of truth. "Councilman, we're planning to bring the community together, to revitalize our town," she replied, steadier than she felt. "We're not just saving a factory, we're saving Maplewood." But as she spoke, she noticed a few anxious faces among the crowd, and she could feel the crack in their collective spirit. Would they stand firm, or would the cloud of doubt loom larger? The councilman leaned in closer, his voice low yet sharp. "I hope you know it won't be that simple." Eleanor's heart sank at the implications. Did he mean to intimidate them? Would he push back against this unyielding wave of hope they had just ignited? The room fell silent, tension thick enough to slice. The voices of her community were rising, but now they seemed to teeter on the edge. Eleanor took a step forward and the question hung in the air, clear as crystal. Would they stand united? Or would fear drive a wedge between them in their most fragile moment? As Eleanor gazed out into the anxious faces, she realized the answer lay not within her alone. It depended on everyone in that room. With her heart pounding, she tightened her grip on Jake's hand and braced for the fight to come. Where would this new confrontation lead? Eleanor's heart raced as the silence enveloped the room, thick with tension. She could see the apprehension written across every face, young and old, familiar and new. The councilman's presence had thrown a shadow over their small gathering, and she felt the spirit they had ignited flicker, threatening to fade away. "Let us not forget," she started, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Everyone here has a stake in Maplewood. We've all felt the pinch of uncertainty, whether it's losing jobs or seeing our neighbors struggle. We are here because we care about this town." A few nods began to ripple through the crowd, as if her words were stitching the frayed edges of hope back together. She sensed that they needed more than just a rallying cry. They needed to feel empowered. "You remember the summer fairs, right? The joy, the pride, the laughter," Eleanor continued, focusing on Mr. Thompson, whose eyes brightened at the mention of the past. "That spirit isn't gone, it's just been waiting for us to reclaim it." Councilman Adams's expression darkened, but Eleanor could see cracks in his stern facade. The people around her began to whisper among themselves, voices growing stronger. She felt a renewed hope surge within her, ready to fight back against the doubters in the room, as well as within her own heart. One of the young mothers stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. "We want our town back. We want our children to grow up in a community that supports them, a place where they can thrive." The room erupted into murmurs of agreement. Eleanor watched as one by one, people began to share their stories of loss, but also of dreams, the dreams for a future where Maplewood pulsed with life once more. Each voice added to the momentum, creating a wave of determination that washed over the gathering. "Let me tell you about the Arts Festival," a retiree piped up, excitement in her tone. "We used to bring in artists, showcase local talent. It was magical." More voices joined in, like a chorus, lifting each other's spirits. Someone suggested fundraising ideas, while another proposed organizing community events, bolstering morale and drawing people together. As Eleanor stood at the center of the growing momentum, she felt Jake's hand squeeze hers tighter. His face lit up with enthusiasm, reflecting the changing atmosphere. She felt a swell of gratitude. They were truly united now, a powerful force against anything that threatened their town. Councilman Adams shifted uncomfortably, his smirk now twisted. "This is amusing," he scoffed, though uncertainty crept into his tone. "But it's not a matter of wishes and hopes. You need real resources. You think a handful of ideas will sway the council?" Eleanor took a step closer, locking eyes with him. "It's more than ideas, Councilman, it's our desire to reclaim what is rightfully ours. We're ready to do the work." At that moment, the crowd erupted in a chorus of cheers. It surged with energy, a shattering wave that rattled the councilman. Eleanor could see the flicker of fear in his eyes. He was unprepared for this. "Let us continue this discussion," she declared, her confidence growing with every word. "Our first step will be to gather ideas, create a plan, and approach the council with unity." The people nodded, voices echoing agreements. They were ready to take action. Yet Eleanor knew there were hurdles ahead. The council may not be swayed easily, and the road to recovery would be longer than they imagined. She glanced back at Jake, who smiled back with encouragement, and for the first time in what felt like ages, she believed in their power to fight. As they began to strategize, a loud crash drew their attention. A group of onlookers had gathered at the front, looking horrified. Eleanor's heart sank at the sight of ominous flashing lights. The police had arrived. What were they here for? For a moment, panic gripped her heart as she wondered whether the confrontation had escalated before they were ready. Would their plans come crashing down even before they had a chance to build them up? Eleanor took a deep breath, steeling herself. They were in this together after all. As her community faced the unknown, she could only hope that their strength would carry them through. What did the police want? And how would they respond? Eleanor's pulse quickened as the police officers stepped closer, their expressions serious. She couldn't shake the feeling of dread tightening in her stomach. Had their fervor gotten out of hand? Could the councilman have called the authorities, hoping to squash their uprising before it took flight? "Stay calm, everyone," she urged, raising her voice but trying to keep it steady. "Let us see what they want." The crowd looked to her, and she could see the flicker of worry mirrored in their eyes. She took a step forward, feeling a mix of anger and protective instinct swell inside her. "Can we help you, officers?" she asked, her voice firm despite the nervous tremor beneath. One officer, a young woman with kind eyes, stepped up. "We have reports of a potential disturbance," she said, scanning the crowd. "We just want to ensure everything is peaceful here." Eleanor shot a glance at Councilman Adams, whose smug demeanor had shifted to disbelief. The gathering had transformed from an uncertain assembly into a vibrant movement. She could see how the officer's presence caused some apprehension among the crowd, yet also acted as a catalyst for their determination. "Peaceful. We're just gathering to discuss ways to support our community, to reclaim our town from neglect," Eleanor replied, her words ringing with the weight of urgency. The crowd murmured in agreement, their voices rising in a unified chorus. The officer regarded Eleanor with a mixture of confusion and respect. "That's commendable. Just keep the discussion civil and respectful, please." A flicker of triumph sparked inside her. The police were here to ensure order, not to put a stop to their gathering. "Absolutely," she promised, feeling the crowd's energy begin to swell once more as the officers stepped back. Eleanor turned her gaze towards the hearts of those gathered. "Let us keep the spirit alive. This is our moment to unite." People began to cheer again, their voices a powerful tide swelling in the room. Each chant of support sent sparks of hope igniting in Eleanor's heart. They were more than a group of concerned citizens. They were a family, and every person added to the vibrant tapestry they intended to weave. Suddenly, a gentle hand rested on her shoulder. Eleanor turned to find Mrs. Jenkins, the local baker. "I have a suggestion," she said, and her voice was steady, filled with resolve. "What if we hosted a community event? Like a revival of the summer fair? We could raise money and bring people together to collaborate." Eleanor's heart leaped at the idea. Yes, a summer fair could reignite our town's spirit. It could show the council that we are capable of great things. The crowd erupted into enthusiastic conversations, excitement brewing like a pot about to boil over. The energy lifted as plans began forming, booths featuring local crafts, food trucks showcasing Maplewood's culinary delights, and a stage for local music talents. It was a beacon of hope in the face of adversity. As the ideas flowed, Eleanor spotted Jake weaving his way through the crowd. He caught her eye and with a beaming smile, raised a fist in solidarity. But then she noticed Councilman Adams quietly retreating to the back of the room, his face a mask of frustration. The sight sent a chill down her spine. It wasn't over. They'd won this round, but the fight to reclaim their town was just beginning. Suddenly, a loud shout pierced through the excitement. "What about the council's response? They won't just sit back and let you take control. Eleanor turned, heart racing anew. The unknown shadows of opposition loomed larger than ever as they plotted their community's revival. She couldn't shake the feeling that their determination might provoke a fierce backlash. What were they truly up against, and how much were they willing to risk to reclaim Maplewood? The stakes were high, and Eleanor realized this was just the beginning of a battle they couldn't ignore. Would their newfound unity withstand the challenges ahead? The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the town square, where the excitement of the crowd began to simmer down. Eleanor could feel the collective energy slowly fading, replaced by a sense of apprehension. While they had sparked a fire in Maplewood with their plans for a summer fair, a gnawing doubt settled in her mind. What if the council, angry at their audacity, pushed back harder than she imagined? "Let us start getting things organized," she called, trying to rally the spirits once more. Her voice rang out, firm, but inside her heart fluttered. It felt as if the weight of the world rested squarely on her shoulders as volunteers began discussing booth ideas, food options, and potential sponsors. Eleanor glanced over at Jake. He remained in the crowd, animated and gesturing passionately. She admired his enthusiasm. It was infectious. But his smile could only ease her nerves for so long. The councilman was still lurking in the background. He was not to be underestimated. "Can we talk?" Jake sidled up to her, his brow furrowed. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Eleanor asked, leaning in. "I'm worried about Adams," he said, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You're right. He'll get desperate to maintain control. What's stopping him from trying to sabotage this fair? He has resources at his disposal." A shiver ran down her spine as the weight of his words sunk in. "We need to be careful. But we can't let fear dictate our actions. We have a chance to show the council we're united." "True, but if we're not prepared..." "Did you see how he left? He wasn't just frustrated, he was furious. If we don't keep an eye on him, we might face repercussions we didn't expect." The uncertainty haunted her. Could she truly rally the town without inciting the wrath of those in power? Just then Mrs. Jenkins returned, carrying a batch of freshly baked cupcakes, aroma wafting in the air. "Hey, I'm going to start making some flyers for the fair," she announced, glancing at Eleanor with determination gleaming in her eyes. "We need everyone involved. The more people know, the harder it'll be for the council to ignore us." "Great idea, Mrs. Jenkins," Eleanor replied, forcing a smile as she fought to quiet the storm inside her mind. But the echo of doubt lingered. The fair, their grand attempt at reclaiming Maplewood, had to succeed, but at what cost? Would it push the councilmen too far? What if their peaceful uprising turned into something dark? As the crowd began dispersing, Eleanor sought out a quieter corner with Jake. "We need a plan, a backup. What if we face backlash? I don't want to bring the community together just to have it all fall apart." Jake nodded, concern etched deeply on his face. "Let us form a core group to stay vigilant. We'll keep track of Adams. We have to anticipate his moves if we want to protect what we're building." With her resolve bolstered, Eleanor felt the seed of hope break through the fear. She gathered a few trusted friends, forming a small circle of support. "We need to stay proactive. This fair is going to happen, but we have to safeguard it too." They spent the fading evening hours brainstorming defenses and contingencies, sharing whispers and laughter, fortifying their resolve while shadows loomed close by. But as the plan took shape, the thought gnawed at Eleanor. What was Adams planning in retaliation? She felt the tension, the undercurrents of change, a storm brewing just beyond their sight. And then somewhere in the distance a car pulled up, a figure stepping out with purpose. Eleanor squinted against the setting sun and felt a rush of urgency as the realization hit her. They might not be prepared for what was coming, but she would fight to ensure they'd face it together. What would the councilmen do next? How would they respond to whatever he had in mind? The answers would come all too soon. The tension in the air thickened as Eleanor watched the figure emerge from the car. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing the uncertainties swirling around her. Would Adams confront her directly? Would his actions unfold like that of an angry bull, charging through the fair's fragile plans? Jake noticed her hesitation. "Eleanor, let us move closer. We need to stay informed." His voice drew her back into focus. They crept toward the new arrival, careful not to attract too much attention, their eyes locked on the man. Adams adjusted his tie and scanned the square. Although he hid a mask of calm, Eleanor could sense the bubbling rage beneath the surface. He collected himself and began striding toward the town hall. The glint of ambition in his eyes told her this wasn't just another day for him. He was planning something drastic. "Did you see that?" "He's up to no good," Jake whispered, his urgency matching her own. Eleanor nodded, her throat dry. "We have to warn everyone. We can't let this fair fall apart before it even begins." They quickly rejoined their group, breathless and frayed with worry. "Adams is making moves," Eleanor announced, capturing everyone's attention. "We have to be on high alert. What we're doing matters, and he's not going to sit idle." The group instantly rallied, exchanging serious expressions and murmurs of resolve. Mrs. Jenkins, her hands still dusted with flour, stepped forward. "We'll make a plan. Let us establish roles for everything: security, communication, and outreach. If we coordinate, we stand a better chance." Eleanor felt a flicker of hope ignite. The community was gathering around her, forming a united front against uncertainty. But just as she began to regain her footing, a shadow fell across her, and she looked up to see Adams standing at the edge of the square, arms crossed, his gaze piercing. "Nice little gathering you have here, Eleanor. Planning a party without an invitation for the council?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. Eleanor's stomach nodded. "We're just trying to bring the town together, Mr. Adams. Something that might benefit everyone." He chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "You think this fair will change anything? The council holds the power. You're merely shouting into the wind. Don't forget, I know everyone's weaknesses. This little venture of yours could make or break you." A silence enveloped the group as they processed his words. Doubt crept back in, gnawing at their sense of camaraderie. "Go home, Eleanor," he continued, his tone icy, "before you make a bigger fool of yourself." With that, he turned on his heel and left, a dread settling over Eleanor's heart. The other volunteers looked at her expectantly, some with fear, others with determination. "Are we really ready for this?" Jake asked, concern lining his brow. Eleanor took a deep breath, feeling all eyes on her. "We have to be ready. We've come too far to turn back now." But as she tried to project confidence, she couldn't shake the feeling that Adams hadn't just threatened her plan. He had unleashed something darker, a silent war simmering beneath the surface. Would she be able to protect her community, or would they be caught in the crossfire? As the meeting broke up, Eleanor caught sight of the town hall window, a dark figure whispering inside. It was almost as if she could see the gears turning. What new plot was about to unfold? Just then her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Mrs. Jenkins flashed on the screen. "Meet me. Urgent news." Eleanor's heart raced again. What had she discovered? What new challenge awaited them? Eleanor's mind raced as she hurried away from the square, her feet almost stumbling over themselves. The urgency in Mrs. Jenkins's message gnawed at her. What would she have found out? The shadows of Adams's presence lingered like a heavy cloud, darkening her thoughts as she approached the old community center where Mrs. Jenkins spent most of her time. As she reached the door, Eleanor took a deep breath, pushing the weight of fear aside. The moment she stepped inside, the familiar warmth washed over her, a stark contrast to the chilly unease that had settled outside. Mrs. Jenkins was waiting, her face a mask of determination, a stark contrast to the flour-dusted hands Eleanor had seen earlier. "Eleanor," she began, her voice low and urgent, "you're not going to believe what I found out. Adams has been stirring the pot, and his threats run deeper than we knew." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? Has he done something?" Mrs. Jenkins leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's been getting support from some of the council members. They're not just indifferent, they're actively trying to undermine us. I overheard them talking about cutting funding for the fair, using their influence to sway public opinion against it." The room spun slightly as Eleanor processed the words. The thought of betrayal grounded her, and the disappointment twisted like a knife in her gut. But why? This fair isn't just for us. It's for the whole town. Could bring everyone together. "I know," Mrs. Jenkins said, placing a comforting hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "But people like Adams thrive on control and division. They don't want the community to unite. It threatens their grip. If they can keep us fragmented, they stay in power." Eleanor's fists clenched. Every ounce of hope she had been rallying around felt as if it was under siege. So what do we do? How can we stop this? A small fire lit in Mrs. Jenkins's eyes. We need to fight back. If we're going to save this fair, we have to mobilize the town. Show them the truth of what's happening. We can't allow fear to win. A flicker of determination sparked in Eleanor's heart. You're right. We need to hold a town meeting, gather everyone together. Show them what Adams is trying to hide. Mrs. Jenkins nodded slowly. It won't be easy, but we can create a different narrative if we come together. The town deserves to hear our side. With renewed vigor, Eleanor set to work mapping out plans. She reached for her phone, sending messages to the volunteers, calling for a meeting to strategize. They would not cower. In a world overshadowed by Adams's influence, they would become the light. As she rallied her thoughts and those of her friends, a sudden jab of cold dread knotted her stomach again. What if Adams learned of their plans? What if he sought to silence them before they could act? Just then, her phone buzzed again. Another message, this one from an unknown number. I know what you're planning. There are eyes everywhere. Be careful. Eleanor's blood ran cold. She quickly glanced at Mrs. Jenkins, both of them sharing a flash of panic. Who could know about their plans? How far gone was Adams's reach? With determination battling against fear, Eleanor clenched her phone tighter. We have to move fast and we have to be smart. Adams doesn't know what we're capable of yet. But as they sped through their preparations, a nagging question lingered in her mind. Who could she trust in a town becoming increasingly divided? And what else was Adams hiding, ready to unleash? With every step they took, Eleanor felt the weight of her community on her shoulders. Would they rise together? Or would the darkness swallow them whole? The stakes were higher than ever. The coming days would tell her everything. Eleanor's mind churned, the urgency of the unknown message pulsing through her veins like electricity. She glanced at Mrs. Jenkins, whose worried brow bent under the tension hanging in the air. They had to act swiftly. The fate of the fair and their community felt precarious, hanging by a thread. Let us organize that meeting, Eleanor said, her voice steadier than she felt. We need everyone on board. If they see the truth, they'll stand with us against Adams. Mrs. Jenkins nodded but sighed, her expression revealing the strain of years spent fighting for their community. I'll help however I can. We need to reach out to the families, the vendors, anyone who's connected to the fair. They need to hear about Adams's scheme. Together they began drafting flyers, their hands working quickly, fueled by an urgency that tightened Eleanor's chest but also ignited something fierce within her. While they printed, ideas flowed between them, speeches, testimonials, ways to expose Adams. The old community center transformed into a war room, each rustle of paper a battle drum summoning courage. Let South meet at the park, where we can gather more than just the town folks. It's got to be loud, Eleanor suggested, envisioning the park filled with buzzing voices and hopeful faces. And we should plan on showcasing some of the fair's highlights, Mrs. Jenkins added enthusiastically. Food, games, memories. It'll remind people what's at stake. As they worked, Eleanor's phone vibrated again. Her heart thumped erratically as she glanced at the screen. Another message from the unknown number. You can't fight this alone. Meet me at sunset by the old oak tree. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Who was this? She shared a glance with Mrs. Jenkins, who raised an eyebrow, concern deepening her features. Do you want to go? Mrs. Jenkins asked, her voice edged with both worry and curiosity. I have to. If they know something, it could be the key to understanding Adams's influence. Eleanor's stomach twisted again, but she steeled herself. I'll be careful. I need to know if there's a way to turn the tide in our favor. Just promise me you'll come back alive, Mrs. Jenkins said, her eyes glistening with an unsettling mix of fear and trust. And if anything feels off, don't hesitate to call for help. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, Eleanor stepped outside into the gathering dusk, the air cooling around her. Each step toward the park dragged on. She felt the weight of her own conviction but also the creeping shadows of doubt. Would this meeting reveal allies or enemies? Was she walking into a trap? When she reached the oak tree, she paused, scanning the area. Nobody. Only the rustle of leaves met her ears. Just as uncertainty threatened to overtake her, a figure stepped out from behind the trunk. A silhouette she didn't recognize, cloaked in shadows but radiating a strange familiarity. "Who are you?" Eleanor demanded, her heart pounding. "A friend," the figure replied, their voice steady yet low. "Someone who has seen what Adams is truly capable of. You need to know he is not alone." Eleanor's breath hitched. The night felt thicker with the weight of secrets and the promise of revelations. Just what was Adams planning? And who else was involved in this web of deception? As she stood there, torn between excitement and dread, 1,000 questions flooded her mind. And all Eleanor could think was how close they were to either victory or disaster. The stakes had never felt so high. But she also knew this was just the beginning. What lay hidden deep within the shadows might shake her community to its core. As she locked eyes with the mysterious figure, she felt the urgency pulsing again, pushing her toward a confrontation that might change everything, or leave her completely exposed. Eleanor steadied her breath, waiting for the truth that could redefine their fight. Would it fortify their resolve, or unravel it in an instant? Eleanor stood before the figure, heart racing, her mind trying to grasp the gravity of the moment. She couldn't afford to hesitate. "What do you know about Adams?" she demanded, steeling herself for answers. The shadows flickered as the figure stepped closer, revealing a familiar face: Marcus, a quiet but observant member of the council. His eyes held an urgency that mirrored her own. "Eleanor, we don't have much time. Adams is planning to leverage his connections to sabotage the fair. He is trying to paint you and the community as reckless, trying to stir unrest to distract the council from his own failings." Eleanor felt a mix of anger and despair. "But we're not reckless. We just want to unite the town to save it." "I know," Marcus replied, urgency pouring from him. "But they twist the narrative. That's why you need to act fast. Gather evidence. Show the council and the town how Adams has held Maplewood back. If you can expose his manipulation, people might see the truth." Eleanor's mind raced. They needed a plan, and they needed it now. "What do you suggest?" "We need to set up a meeting, with the trust of the townsfolk behind you. Get them to share their stories, how the council, led by him, has failed them. Make it clear that their futures depend on this fair. Not just for jobs but as a rallying point for hope." As she stood there, a realization dawned on Eleanor. "You're right. We can harness the power of what this fair represents. It's about more than just a celebration. It's about rebirth, unity, fighting back against neglect." The sunlight dipped lower, shadows lengthening around them. Marcus nodded, a flicker of hope brightening his expression. "And I'll help. I can rally support from other townsfolk who feel the same frustration. They'll be there to back you up." Feeling empowered by his words, Eleanor took a deep breath. "Thank you. We can turn this tide if we act together." As they discussed the logistics, a sense of urgency ignited in her spirit. This was their moment. They had to present their case, showing not just the council but the entire community what was at stake. They hurried back to the community center, where volunteers were buzzing about the upcoming fair, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Eleanor's heart shifted into high gear as they approached. She gathered everyone, her voice strong and hopeful. "We're facing a critical moment. Adams is plotting to undermine us, and we need to rise to the occasion. We're not fighting against a factory. We're fighting for our community's future." The room went quiet, the weight of her words sinking in. A glimmer of fear crossed their faces, but as one person spoke out, they began to stir. "It's time we show him he can't control us." The crowd erupted with energy, voices rising in resolute agreement. They shared ideas and laughter filled the air, dawning a sense of unity. Days flew by, the fair bringing life back into Maplewood, but Eleanor could feel the tension simmering underneath. The council was circling, still plotting. Yet every step they took, every flyer printed, every story shared from faithful townsfolk brought them closer to reclaiming their home. On the eve of the fair, Eleanor gathered her children, looking into their proud faces. "I'm doing this for you both. I'm fighting not just for this town, but for a future where you can grow and thrive." Tears glistened as they embraced her, the strength of her son's voice reassuring her. "We're all in this together, Mom." The day of the fair arrived, with colors bursting around the park, excitement bubbling up as booths filled with the warmth of the community's spirit. Eleanor felt alive, enveloped by hope. The gathering was a vibrant tapestry of their stories, a roar of resilience that drowned out Adams' lies. And then as evening settled in, a ripple spread through the crowd. Councilman Adams had arrived, a dark storm cloud weaving its way into the heart of their celebration. Eleanor's heart clenched as she spotted him, but she felt something greater rise within her, a surge of collective strength that shimmered. In the air, she faced the crowd, boldly stepping forward, her voice unwavering. "You all understand now what we've built together. This fair is a testament to our spirit, our determination to fight back. Let this not just be a party but a movement." Cheers erupted, echoing through Maplewood, drowning out Adams's scoff. The councilman stepped closer, frustration evident, but Eleanor found strength in the townsfolk's unified support. Their eyes gleaming in solidarity. Danger had not shaken them, but fortified their resolve. In that moment they were more than a crowd, they were a force of nature. Adams shifted, realizing that the power once held in contempt was now his greatest threat. Eleanor breathed deep, feeling the love radiate from her community. They had faced fears, overcome division, and stood shoulder to shoulder together. They formed an indomitable shield against whatever might come next. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the park, smiles lit the faces around her. Eleanor's heart felt full to bursting. They had begun a new chapter for Maplewood, one inked with courage and hope. Her heart surged with the realization that this was just the beginning. Together they would write the story of resilience, rewriting their destiny. And in that moment a promise unfurled. Maplewood would thrive, and they would nurture its roots for generations to come. Now was the moment to rise, to act, to embrace the future. And as they surged into the night, Eleanor knew that had to resonate beyond this celebration. You need to subscribe now to join this powerful journey, and not miss out on more exclusive stories of transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure our stories get seen. Comment your feelings and reactions about this inspiring conclusion. It means the world to us. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. True fans know the importance of supporting the channel through these powerful actions.